Yeah! The monstrous Scor 6080Z might just be my favourite e-mountain bike of the year, but it's not going to be for everyone. So stay tuned to learn who it's for and why I like it so much in this long-term review on loamwolf.com. Let's go. Oh my God! Yes, this is the Scor 6080Z, the first bike by Scor made out of aluminium to hit the market so far. And for that, they've gone crazy with it. They've given it 180mm travel in the rear, 190mm fork, and some pretty wild geometry to back it up. Scor is BMC's party brand, essentially, the brand that was created to use BMC's engineering but apply it to more of a gravity-focused, playful, sort of aggressive overall mountain bike brand. And the result has been some super fun bikes that we've really enjoyed testing so far. I had to have my hands on one of these to test when it came out, so I was really stoked to get the opportunity to do so and test it around the trails of Scotland and the wider UK over the last couple of months to make this review. So let's get into the details. The first being that 180mm of rear travel that I mentioned. It uses Scor's instant center dual link suspension design. It has fairly vertical axle path and some interesting kinematics, but it is basically just focused to give nice and supple response, but plenty of ramp up towards the end of the travel, and a vertical axle path to give you a fairly poppy and playful feel, even though it does have that 180mm travel. I can tell you before we get into the ride impressions, they have definitely delivered something pretty unique and special with this rear end. It does really just combine the benefits of 180mm travel on the way down for the bigger hits, but still retains plenty of pop and play, making this big aluminium e-bike still relatively playful when combined with its geometry. Up front you get 190mm fork, and Scor has just really made this super durable, category 5, so downhill rated e-bike overall. They've really not cut any corners in making this thing absolutely stand up to the abuse, and it's just sort of really well finished overall. It's powered by the Bosch Performance Line CX Gen 4 system. Sadly, it doesn't have the new Gen 5, but the Gen 4 is still an absolute solid performer, giving you ample power to get you up almost everything, and certainly a very well-proven track record in terms of durability in the e-bike space. That means 85 newton meters of torque, 600 watts of peak power, and then Scor's fitted a 750 watt hour internal battery, which can be removed. It's secured inside that down tube. It's got a key to remove it, and then that plastic cover on the down tube comes off to let you do so. So nice for the people who want to go on crazy 2 battery rides to buy a second battery and quickly swap them out, or to make charging easier at home. As with all Bosch bikes, it has the same mini remote up on the handlebar and then the LED system controller in the top tube, giving you really nice clean integration. And the top tube controller displays battery life to the nearest 10%, as well as showing you what of the 4 modes you have selected. Using the Bosch eBike Flow app, you can go in, change all of these modes, tailor the amount of power that you get out of it. You also get things like security, so you can track the bike. If it gets stolen, you can lock it, and you can also apply updates over the air. It's a really nice app, and it's certainly overall a very clean integration in this bike. Looking at the other details, you've got plenty of room inside the front triangle for a water bottle. You've got internal cable routing, which thankfully doesn't go through the headset, much to the relief of all mechanics around the world. You've got Scor's signature, I don't know what they call it, I guess jump line chainstay protector. It looks like a set of 3 jumps. It's pretty cool and does a solid job at keeping chain noise at bay. It's got a nice little metal plate in the kind of front chainring area as well, which stops any damage from happening there. It's an area that we commonly see a bit of chain slap occurring. So little plate there to keep things running smoother and damage free for longer is really nice to see. You've got a geometry flip chip in the rear shock between a high and the low position. It doesn't offer you a huge amount of adjustability, but just enough to give you a little bit of a change to the bike's handling characteristics overall. And on the bottom, you've got a motor protector, which is plastic, then wrapped in rubber, which is really nice to help keep noise down to a minimum when you've got stones flicking up. I did manage to totally tear it off the bottom of the bike at one point, but it was on an impact that was very deserved. So when a rock had kind of propped itself up on the landing of a jump and then the bottom bracket just hit it, certainly not a problem. you know, we could always ask for more durable protectors on the bottom. I think I'd like to see more like Privateer's style of metal protectors fitted, especially to a big burly bike like this, where you're not really going to care about the extra 100 or 200 grams. But this thing is probably going to do enough of a job for most riders anyway. Rounding out the features, you've got a SRAM universal derailleur hanger in the rear, a neat little integrated mudguard to keep the spray off the rear shock, and it's important to note this is a mullet bike only, so 27.5 inch wheel in the rear, 29 inch up front, which has really suited its handling characteristics too. Taking a look at the geometry, and Scor has typically had fairly unique numbers in that they go quite long and slack at the front end and then really tight at the rear. And this is no exception. This is actually, I would say, maybe pushed that philosophy to the maximum so far. So you've got a 63-degree head tube angle, a 76-degree effective seat tube angle, and a 435mm rear end across all sizes. And then the reaches in the small to extra large size range are fairly long, with this size large coming in at 485mm, and it's paired with a fairly low, for a bike like this, 634mm stack height. And then the overall wheelbase comes in at 1,271mm, of course with a lot of that length being in front of the bottom bracket. Taking a look at the build specs, and Scor is only offering the 6080Z in a choice of 2 builds in Europe and North America, with the NX build coming in at €5,500 or dollars, and this GX build that we tested here coming in at €7,000 or dollars. Both of these are only offered in one colour per build, with the NX build coming in a sort of beige painted colour, and this coming in as a clear coat raw, which is super nice finish and very fitting for this machine, I think. Taking a look at the spec of this GX build, and you've got a RockShox suspension package with a Zeb Ultimate 190mm up front and a Super Deluxe Ultimate in the rear. You get SRAM Code RSC brakes with a 220 front and 200mm rear rotor, a full GX Eagle mechanical 12-speed drivetrain with the single click shifter, stopping you from overshifting and potentially causing harm. You get a bike yoke Divine dropper post, although the frame insertion depth is not insane, so to be safe, I guess, they've spec'd fairly short dropper posts across the size range, with the size large only coming with a 160mm post. Certainly for me, I'd be able to get a 210 in the frame without a problem, but it would definitely be nice to see either the option to spec the dropper post that's appropriate for your legs, or just longer posts fitted, but you can see why Scor has done it. The cockpit is a Bergtech Enduro Mark III stem with Scor's in-house alloy bar. It's 31.8, helping to give you a little bit more comfort there. And then rounding out the specs, you've got a DT Swiss H1900 wheel set wrapped in a set of Maxxis Assegai tyres with a double down Max Terra in the rear and an Exo Plus Max Grip up front. The overall build weight for the 6080Z GX in the size large that we tested as stock was 56.7 pounds or 25.7 kilograms, which is certainly on the heavy side, but not ridiculous, kind of sitting in line with the likes of the Norco Range VLT, which has a carbon frame. So yeah, it's as you would expect, I guess. It's a big burly, long travel alloy e-bike, but it's not ridiculous. Anyway, that's enough about the details. Let's talk about the most important thing. How does the Scor 6080Z perform out on the trails? Oh! Woo! Oh! Before we get into the ride impressions, I am a 100 kilo, 220 pound tester that is 6'2" tall or 189 centimeters. And I am certainly on the longer legged and slightly shorter torso side of things. Riding this bike in the size large with its 485mm reach was certainly on the limit of what I'm comfortable with, but thanks to its 35mm stem, it fitted me pretty well. And as you'll see, the dropper post was nice and high out of the frame to support my long legs. Overall, size large was a good fit for me, but it's worth paying attention to how you're proportioned and your preferences to make sure you get the right fit too. When Scor first released 6080Z, it was a bike that I absolutely had to test. I really agree with the philosophy of this bike. A self-shuttle downhill rig makes a lot of sense to me, but because they've sort of applied their own DNA to it, it is not just a bike that you can only ride exclusively on downhill mountain bike tracks. It is, their sort of playful nature that they try to throw into every bike that they produce is really come through with this and just helps it from being a complete pig to ride on anything that isn't just super gravity fed. So it was definitely a bike that spoke to me and how I like to ride, and I was really excited to see how it did end up stacking up when it was out on the trail. Now, on the way up the hill, it's an e-bike. So if you're on a fire road, as long as you've got a fairly comfortable seated position, you can just spin your legs, let the power of the Bosch CX Gen 4 system take you up. And this has got a fairly solid enough pedaling platform. It's not super soggy if you've got it in one of the lower power modes and you're giving it a bit of your own energy. But it doesn't make it uncomfortable when you're on rougher terrain. It still has enough compliance in that rear end, I guess, because you do have that little bit more negative travel to use for rougher terrain, because it is a fairly long travel e-mountain bike. It does just keep it nice and comfortable. So yeah, whether it be fire road or, you know, slightly simple, I guess, but slightly rougher climbs, this bike is absolutely fine and will absolutely do the trick getting you up the hill. What it doesn't do fantastically is climb super steep and super tight terrain very well. Because it has a super short rear end, really slack head angle, you do feel like you've got to work really hard to balance your weight front and rear on the bike to keep that front end pointing in the right direction and taking you where you want to go, but also giving enough weight to the rear end to make it dig in. So if you are a rider who lives for the technical climbs, but you aren't necessarily a super good rider, this is not going to do you any favors. It's not a very flattering technical climber. If you are a rider who can kind of moto trial style work it on the back wheel and pedal wheelie up stuff, then this bike is absolutely excellent for that. But that's a very advanced technique, I guess, and certainly not something that I'm fantastic at, and I don't imagine a lot of riders will be wanting to rely upon solely for the way up the hill. Don't get me wrong, for like mildly technical climbs, it's not terrible. The bottom bracket is fairly low, so you may run into pedal clearance issues, but yeah, it's not a bike that you can't climb in technical terrain. It's just definitely not a bike for the technical climbers who just love a bike that is going to reward them and make them feel inspired to keep on doing more technical climbing. But that's not really what a self-shuttle downhill rig is all going to be about. And this is definitely a bike that's been more focused towards offering you an absolute riot on the way down the hill. And that's exactly what it delivers in. So this is 180, 190mm travel and fairly long and slack. And that means, obviously, it's going to give you plenty of cushion, plenty of support to push nice and hard, and plenty of confidence and stability. But because of how they've given it that shorter rear end and slight kind of support and I want to say like natural BMX style feeling of just feeling connected to the rear wheel with that fairly vertical axle path in the suspension, it does mean that it doesn't completely lose all of its agility. So if you're in technical bits of downhill, like tight successive switchbacks, it will still go from corner to corner without too much issue, and you can still pop and play a little bit more than you'd ever expect to be doing so on a 57-pound 180mm travel e-bike. It's impressive what they've managed to do in the balance there, and especially in super steep terrain, that short rear end means that you don't have the problem of getting pitched forward so much. You can kind of sit hunkered down into the rear wheel and just feel really planted and controlled and confident on steeper descents. The dropper post spec is not going to help with that by any means. I did end up just relying on using an Allen key to raise it and drop it at the start and end of descents to get enough clearance. I did actually fit a 210mm one-up post for a period of time as well, which gave me certainly much better clearance and still had a little bit of leeway in terms of the frame to get it dropped slightly further, but I was definitely close to the limit of what I'd be able to run. I definitely wouldn't be able to get a 240mm post in this, and I do have really long legs. So certainly the dropper post spec and dropper post insertion depths is something that you should be paying attention to if you're going to buy this bike. But aside from saddle clearance issues, on steep descents, on rough and rowdy descents, and even on slightly less rough and rowdy descents, the Scor 6080Z has absolutely excelled and been an incredible amount of fun to test. I'd say at €7,000 or dollars, this is not a terrible value proposition at all. Of course, it's an alloy bike and some of the spec isn't fantastic, but I'd say overall, given that you've got the spec in the right places, Coda RCs, which are solid performers, provided you get a set that works well, the RockShox Ultimate Level suspension is fantastic and some of the best that we've tested this year. Yeah, I don't think you'd feel too hard done by the quality DT Swiss wheel set, the tyre selection being quality, albeit maybe not quite appropriate for this bike. I'd love to see downhill rear casing and double down front instead of the double down rear and EXO Plus front that it comes spec'd with. But yeah, I don't think this is terrible value. I think the details are really well covered. I think it looks like a quality bike in the flesh. And when you're out on the trail, it runs nice and quietly and smoothly, feels really planted. And it's not just been me that's really sung the praises of this bike. I've even had other people hop onto it during a photo shoot or just out on a ride, and they've expressed the same just absolute joy of sending it down the hill, feeling really confident, but not feeling like you're just focused on dipping your heels and ploughing. It just balances, having enough support in the rear end, enough support at the bottom out, but also, overall feeling of what's going on below you on the trail, and a nice mixture of stability in the front end with agility in the rear to produce a seriously fun machine on the way down the hill. Of course, if you're just looking to pedal trail center style terrain, you're probably not going to be looking at 180mm travel e-bike anyway, but this isn't going to be the bike for you. But if you are looking for, enduro trails, downhill trails, free ride trails, I hit some of the biggest jumps of my life on this bike just because I was feeling inspired by it, and it definitely didn't hold me back on big moto kickers and shark fins going left, right, as you'll see in the footage. It's absolutely an inspirational bike. It's ram-dialed, it's fairly solid value, and I just think it's a really, really good time if you're not looking just to exclusively ride technical uphills and fairly mellow downhills. Overall, a very solid e-bike indeed, and a bike that I'm excited to hopefully get more time on in the future, because it's a bike that speaks to me, and a bike that I've enjoyed testing a lot. I hope you guys have enjoyed checking out this video on the Scor 6080Z. Do let us know in the comments below if you have any questions or any feedback that you want to give us on this bike. Give us a like if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more awesome content on awesome bikes and e-bikes like the Scor 6080Z. Also, please do consider subscribing to our members only portal, where you'll get the chance to be entered to test products with us and come to shootouts, as well as get industry discounts and many other opportunities while supporting us, a small independent mountain bike online publication who's just looking to produce honest and straightforward and trustworthy reviews for you. So yeah, do hit the description below to hit our members only portal and check that out if that's something you're interested in supporting. And for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you out on the trails.